Hi, I'm back. Is this working now? Is this working now? Yes. Okay. Anyways, I'm in, I actually don't know if you can hear me. I also don't know if it's, yes. Okay. Anyways, just in case, hi. Okay, I'm kind of sad right now, so I feel like reading. just anyways, I was thinking about reading The Secret Garden for the first time in my life. Yeah, it's late. It's almost 11 p.m. But I don't care. Plus this is a book channel. What did you expect? This is completely normal. But you guys are actually going to realize how much I mess up and stuff and my pronunciation, and I'm gonna look words up as we read too, because I'm just that type of person. So basically, I chose the Secret Garden one because it's on public domain and it's not illegal if I actually stream reading this. So yeah, that's a plus. Unfortunately, the other ones are not on public domain. Two of the other audiobooks that I posted are not on public domain, so I can't monetize them. So I'm not gonna monetize them. For that one person who commented, I hope you get ads so you can get paid for this. Thank you, but it's illegal. Unless they let me. But anyways, I can't monetize them anymore. So now that I learned about everything with copyright and whatever, so let's get going with The Secret Garden. This is great. Anyways, let me get to the first page. Chapter 1. There's no one left. When Mary Lennox was sent to Misselthwaite Manor. Oh wow, yeah, I'm definitely gonna mess up. Anyways, there's a 1 by it. Am I just stupid? Yes, okay, I'm just gonna continue. To live with her uncle, everybody said she was the most disagreeable-looking child ever seen. It was true, too. She had a little thin face and a little thin body, thin light hair, and a sour expression. Her hair was yellow, and her face was yellow because she had been born in India and had always been ill in one way or another. Her father had held a position under the English government and had always been busy and ill himself. And her mother had been a great beauty who cared only to go to parties and amuse herself with gay people. Heck yeah, go off, queen. She had not wanted a little girl. I know gay means happy. It's for the comedy. Anyways. She had not wanted a little girl at all. And when Mary was born, she handed her over to the care of Aya, nanny or nursemaid, who was made to understand that if she wished to please the Mem Sahib, which is during British colonial rule, a word Indians used to address or refer to a European woman. Okay. To please the European woman, she must keep the child out of sight as much as possible. Oh, so when I looked this book up, it was kind of controversial because of how racist it was, and this is on the first page. I mean, it's not racist. I mean, it's just being historically accurate. Anyways, I'm gonna continue, sorry. So when she was sickly, fretful, ugly, little baby, she was kept out of the way. And when she became a sickly, fretful, toddling thing, she was kept out of the way also. She never remembered seeing familiarly anything but the dark faces of her ayah and the other native servants. and as they always obeyed her and gave her her own way in everything, because the Mem Sahib would be angry if she was disturbed by her crying. By the time she was 6 years old, she was as tyrannical and selfish a little pig as ever lived. The young English governess who came to teach her to read and write disliked her so much that she gave up her place in 3 months. And when other governesses came to try to fill it, they always went away in a shorter time than the first one. So if Mary had not chosen to really want to know how to read books, she would never have learned her letters at all. So basically, she was spoiled, and she was just spoiled. Anyways. Okay. One frightfully hot morning, when she was about 9 years old, she awakened feeling very cross, and she became crosser still when she saw the servant who stood by her bedside was not her ayah. "Why did you come?" she said to the strange woman. "I will not let you stay. Send my ayah to me." The woman looked frightened, but she only stammered that the ayah could not come, and when Mary threw herself into a passion and beat and kicked her, she looked only more frightened and repeated that it was not possible for the ayah to come to Missy Sahib. There was something mysterious in the air that morning. Nothing was done in its regular order, and several of the native servants seemed missing, while those whom Mary saw slunk or hurried about with ashy and scared faces. But no one would tell her anything, and her ayah did not come. She was actually left alone as the morning went on, and at last she wandered out into the garden and began to play by herself under a tree near the veranda. I don't know what that is. It's fine. Near the veranda. Where am I? I'm lost. Okay. She pretended that she was making a flower bed, and she stuck big scarlet hibiscus, species of tropical shrubs or trees bearing large, showy flowers in various colors, blossoms into little heaps of earth, all the time growing more and more angry and muttering to herself the things she would say and the names she would call Sadie when she returned. "Pig, pig, daughter of pigs," she said, because to call a native a pig is the worst insult of all. She was grinding her teeth and saying this over and over again when she heard her mother come out on the veranda with someone. She was with a fair young man, and they stood talking together in a low, strange voice. Mary knew the fair young man who looked like a boy. She had heard that he was a very young officer who had just come from England. The child stared at him, but she stared most at her mother. She always did this when she had the chance to see her, because the Mem Sahib, Mary used to call her that oftener than anything else, was such a tall, slim, pretty person who wore such lovely clothes. Her hair was like curly silk, and she had a delicate little nose which seemed to be disdaining things, and she had large laughing eyes. All her clothes were thin and floating, and Mary said they were full of lace. They looked fuller of lace than ever this morning. But her eyes were not laughing at all. They were large and scared, and lifted imploringly to the fair boy officer's face. "Is it so very bad? Oh, is it?" Mary heard her say. "Awfully," the young man answered in a trembling voice. "Awfully, Miss Lennox. You ought to have gone to the hills 2 weeks ago." The Mem Sahib wrung her hands. "Oh, I know I ought," she cried. "I only stayed to go to that silly dinner party. What a fool I was." At the very moment, such a loud sound of wailing broke out from the servants' quarters that she clutched the young man's arm, and Mary stood shivering from head to foot. The wailing grew wilder and wilder. "What is it? What is it?" Mrs. Lennox gasped. Someone has died, answered the boy officer. You did not say it had broken out among your servants. I did not know, the Memsahib cried. Come with me, come with me! And she turned and ran into the house. After that, appalling things happened, and the mysteriousness of the morning was explained to Mary. The cholera had broken out in its most fatal form, and people were dying like flies. The ayah had been taken ill in the night, and it was because she had just died that the servants had wailed in the huts. Before the next day, 3 other servants were dead, and others had run away in terror. There was panic on every side, and dying people in all the bungalows. During the confusion and bewilderment of the second day, Mary hid herself in the nursery and was forgotten by everyone. Nobody thought of her, nobody wanted her, and strange things happened of which she knew nothing. Mary alternately cried and slept through the hours. She only knew that people were ill and that she heard mysterious and frightening sounds. Once she crept into the dining room and found it empty. Though a partly finished meal was on the table and chairs and plates looked as if they had been hastily pushed back when the dinners rose suddenly for some reason. The child ate some fruit and biscuits, and being thirsty she drank a glass of wine which stood nearly filled. It was sweet, and she did not know how strong it was. Very soon it made her intensely drowsy, and she went back to her nursery and shut herself in again. Frightened by cries she heard in the huts, and by the hurrying sound of feet, the wine made her so sleepy that she could scarcely keep her eyes open, and she lay down on her bed and knew nothing more for a long time. Many things happened during the hours in which she slept so heavily, but she was not disturbed by the wails and the sounds of things being carried in and out of the bungalow, which is a house built in style to mitigate intense light and tropical heat. Okay, cool. I think we all knew that, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. Anyways, continuing. When she awakened, she lay and stared at the wall. The house was perfectly still. She had never known it to be so silent before. She heard neither voices nor footsteps, and wondered if everybody had got well of the cholera, and all the trouble was over. She wondered also who would take care of her now her ayah was dead. There would be a new ayah, and perhaps she would know some new stories. Mary had been rather tired of the old ones. She did not cry because her nurse had died. She was not an affectionate child, and had never cared much for anyone. The noise and hurrying about the wailing over the cholera had frightened her, and she had been angry because no one seemed to remember that she was alive. Everyone was too panic-stricken to think of a little girl no one was fond of. When people had the cholera, it seemed that they remembered nothing but themselves, but if everyone had got well again, surely someone would remember and come to look for her. But no one came, and as she lay waiting, the house seemed to grow more and more silent. She heard something rustling on the matting, and when she looked down, she saw a little snake gliding along, and watching her with eyes like jewels. She was not frightened, because he was a harmless little thing who would not hurt her, and he seemed in a hurry to get out of the room. He slipped under the door as she watched him. "How queer and quiet it is," she said. It sounds as if there were no one in the bungalow but me and the snake." Almost the next minute she heard footsteps in the compound, and then on the veranda. They were men's footsteps, and the men entered the bungalow and talked in low voices. No one went to meet or to speak to them, and they seemed to open doors and look into rooms. "What desolation!" she heard one voice say. "That pretty, pretty woman! I suppose the child, too. I heard there was a child, though no one ever saw her." Mary was standing in the middle of the nursery when they opened the door a few minutes later. She looked an ugly, cross little thing, and was frowning because she was beginning to be hungry and feel disgracefully neglected. The first man who came in was a large officer she had once seen talking to her father. He looked tired and troubled, but when he saw her, he was so startled that he almost jumped back. "Barnley!" he cried out. "Oh, I said Barnley. It's Barney!" I'm so sorry. "Barney!" he cried out. "There's a child here, a child alone, in a place like this. Mercy on us, who is she?" "I am Mary Lennox," the little girl said, drawing herself up stiffly. She thought the man was very rude to call her father's bungalow a place like this. "I fell asleep when everyone had the cholera, and I have only just wakened up. Why does nobody come?" "It is the child no one ever saw," exclaimed the man, turning to his companions. "She has actually been forgotten." "Why was I forgotten?" "Shoot, that was the wrong tone. She's actually pretty angry. Why was I forgotten?" Mary said, stamping her foot. "Why does nobody come?" The young man, whose name was Barney, looked at her very sadly. Mary even thought she saw him wink his eyes, as if to wink tears away. "Poor little kid," he said. "There is nobody left to come." It was in that strange and sudden way that Mary found out that she had neither father nor mother left, that they had died and been carried away in the night, and that the few native servants who had not died also had left the house as quickly as they could get out of it, none of them even remembering that there was a Missy Sahib. That was why the place was so quiet. It was true that there was no one in the bungalow but herself and the little rustling snake. I feel like if I was reading this in English class, which my drawing looks like an English teacher. I tried to draw myself, but I can't draw. I feel like my teacher would be like, "So what does the snake represent? Is it irony, since she required so much attention and got everything she wanted, but then she was backstabbed by the world because everyone that knew her was killed and ran away? And now the snake, which could symbolize the devil, which could symbolize the devil being like, haha, child, you deserve this." Or it could be something completely different. I don't really know. This is a classic, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a meaning behind the animal being a snake in particular, but I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not an English teacher, and I don't like thinking about it, even though I just did. That's ironic, actually. Guys, this is actually... I'm getting deja vu right now. I'm literally getting deja vu right now. That was the first chapter. I'm pretty excited. Dude, the only reason I started reading this book, or wanted to read this book, was because Aurora, she wrote a song for the movie The Secret Garden, and it's based on this book, obviously, because, you know, and I'm like, yeah, she was like, "Oh yeah, I loved this book as a child," and I'm like, I never read it, I want to read it, and then I want to watch the movie. Once I'm done reading this. So if you guys don't know, Aurora is my favorite artist, singer, person. So I'm obviously gonna. It's not. She never said it was her favorite book, but she liked it, and I want to read it. So yeah. Let's see how long the second chapter is. The chapters aren't too long, but I don't know if my voice can handle continuous speaking. But I'll try. I'll try to read the second chapter. Just for you. Just for you. Okay. Hold on, let me drink water. My throat is so dry now from speaking. Okay. Why is monetization off? It's not like I'm gonna get any money anyways. Cool. Epic! Anyways, I'm gonna continue. Mistress Mary, quite contrary. Ooh, that rhymes. Okay. Mary had liked to look at her mother from a distance, and she had thought her very pretty. But as she knew very little of her, and she could scarcely have been expected to love her or to miss her very much when she was gone. She did not miss her at all, in fact, and as she was a self-absorbed child, she gave her entire thought to herself, as she had always done. If she had been older, she would no doubt have been very anxious at being left alone in the world, but she was very young, and as she had always been taken care of, she supposed she always would be. What she thought was that she would like to know if she was going to nice people, who would be polite to her, and give her her own way, as her ayah and the other native servants had done. She knew that I feel like I'm saying she a lot. She. It's just starting to sound like a weird word to me. Okay, my brain's going burr. Anyways. See, if I was recording right now, this would be a point where I would stop and be like, okay, I'll record this later because I can't even read simple sentences anymore. Anyways. I knew that she was not going to stay at the English clergyman. See? Anyway, house where she was taken at first. She did not want to stay. The English clergyman. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it clergy or clergy? Clergy. I think it's clergy. Clergyman was poor, and he had 5 children nearly all the same age, and they wore shabby clothes and were always quarreling and snatching toys from each other. Mary hated their untidy bungalow and was so disagreeable to them that after the first day or two nobody would play with her. By the second day they had given her a nickname which made her furious. It was Basil who thought of it first. Basil was a little boy with impudent blue eyes and turned-up nose, and Mary hated him. She was playing by herself under a tree, just as she had been playing the day the cholera broke out. She was making heaps of earth and paths for a garden, and Basil came and stood near to watch her. Presently, he got rather interested and suddenly made a suggestion. "Why don't you put a heap of stones there and pretend it is a rockery?" he said. "There, in the middle." He leaned over to her to point. "Go away!" cried Mary. "I don't want boys! Go away!" For a moment, oh, so she's gay. Sorry. I'm kidding. For a moment, Basil looked angry, and then he began to tease. He was always teasing his sisters. He danced round and round her, and made faces and sang and laughed. "Mistress Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and marigold all in a row?" Dude, I literally don't know why my voice went into a British accent when I was saying that. Anyways, he said, let me know if it was a good accent. I want to know. Okay. He sang it until the other children heard and laughed too. And the crosser Mary got, the more they sang, "Mistress Mary, quite contrary." And after that, as long as she stayed with them, they called her Mistress Mary, quite contrary. When they spoke of her to each other, and often when they spoke to her. "You are going to be sent home," Basil said to her, "at the end of the week, and we're glad of it." I'm glad of it too, answered Mary. Where is home? She doesn't know where home is? That wasn't a question. There's an exclamation point. But anyways, said Basil, with 7-year-old scorn. It's England, of course. Our grandmamma lives there, and our sister Mabel was sent to her last year. You are not going to your grandmamma. You have none. You are going to your uncle. His name is Mr. Archibald Craven. I don't know anything about him, snapped Mary. I know you don't, Basil answered. You don't know anything. Girls never do. I heard Father and Mother talking about him. He lives in a great big desolate old house in the country, and no one goes near him. He's so crossed he won't let them, and they wouldn't come if he would let them. He's a hunchback, and he's horrid. I don't believe you, said Mary, and she turned her back and stuck her fingers in her ears, because she would not listen any more. But she thought over it a great deal afterward, and when Miss Crawford told her that night that she was going to sail away to England in a few days and go to her uncle, Mr. Archibald Craven, who lived in Misselthwaite Manor, she looked so stony and stubbornly uninterested that they did not know what to think about her. They tried to be kind to her, but she only turned her face away when Miss Crawford attempted to kiss her, and held her stiffly when Mr. Crawford patted her shoulder. She was such a plain child, said Mrs. Crawford, Mrs. Crawford said pityingly, afterward. And her mother was such a pretty creature. She had a very pretty manner, too, and Mary has the most unattractive ways I ever saw in a child. The children call her Mistress Mary quite contrary, and though it is naughty of them, no one can't help understanding it. One can't help understanding it. Perhaps if her mother had carried her pretty face and her pretty manners oftener into the nursery, Mary might have learned some pretty ways too. It is very sad now the poor beautiful thing is gone, to remember that many people never even knew that she had a child at all. I believe she scarcely ever looked at her, sighed Miss Crawford. When her Aya was dead, there was no one to give a thought to the little thing. Think of the servants running away and leaving her all alone in that deserted bungalow. Colonel McGrew said he nearly jumped out of his skin when he opened the door and found her standing by herself in the middle of the room. Mary made a long voyage to England under the care of an officer's wife who was taking her children to leave them in a boarding school. She was very much absorbed in her own little boy and girl, and was rather glad to hand the child over to the woman and was rather glad to hand the child over to the woman Mr. Archibald Craven sent to meet her. Okay, I thought they were talking about Mr. Archibald being a woman. I was like, huh? Then wouldn't you put Miss or Mrs., you know? Anyways. Where am I? The woman was his housekeeper at Misselthwaite Manor, and her name was Miss Medlock. She was a stout woman, with very red cheeks and sharp black eyes. She wore a very purple dress, a black silk mantle with jet fringe on it, and a black bonnet with purple velvet flowers, which stuck up and trembled when she moved her head. Mary did not like her at all, but as she very seldom liked people, there was nothing remarkable in that. Besides which, it was very evident Mrs. Medlock did not think much of her. My word, she's a plain little piece of goods, she said, and we'd heard that her mother was a beauty. She hadn't handed much of it down, has she, ma'am? Perhaps she will improve as she grows older, the officer's wife said good-naturedly. Okay. Well, someone is using the blow dryer. That is terrible timing. Welcome everyone who's watching. I'm so sorry about this interruption. Oh wait, that's not the hair dryer. That's the vacuum. I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. But I think that's a sign for me to stop reading because my voice is giving out and I can't lose it right now. So, thank you for joining me.